Hi, Cemetery of Choice followers. Today is July 19th, and we're going to look at the abortion deaths I know of where the anniversary is today. And both of them are from that period between when abortion first started being liberalized in some states to where the Roe versus Wade decision came down in 73, and it's just like all bets are off. And I think they illustrate a lot of points about what that transition from abortion being illegal to abortion being legal meant in terms of abortion mortality. So the first one was in New York in 1970. Now, New York just pretty much preemptively put Roe versus Wade into effect on July 1st, 1970. It was just anything goes, have at it up to 24 weeks. I don't know offhand if they had a life of the mother exception after 24 weeks. They probably didn't because it's a nonsensical concept. Basically, up until viability, they didn't care. And doctors were just doing outpatient, very dangerous abortions on an outpatient basis. It was just a free for all. And kind of get a feel for what happened. So the death in New York I want to talk about is a young woman named Carmen, a Hispanic woman, 31 years old, and she went into Lincoln Hospital in New York City for a 14-week saline abortion. Now, this is one of the things that just drives me crazy is that the abortion rights movement, the pro-choice lobby, does not address just the absolute idiocy of American abortion practitioners, and they did this too in the UK. These saline abortions, they have these gigantic amniocentesis needles. You've probably seen them. And what they would do is that they would pull out a bunch of amniotic fluid, and then they would push in a really strong salt solution. Now, this type of abortion was invented in the Soviet Union in the 1930s, and it kind of fell out of favor there pretty quickly because it's extremely dangerous to the mothers. And immediately after World War II, it really, really, really took off in Japan. And the results were disastrous. And two Japanese doctors, Takashi Wagatsuma and Yukio Manabe, tried to warn the West, do not do this, do not do this, do not do this. Because they noticed that if you accidentally got this saline into the mother's bloodstream, it could cause brain damage, organ damage. It could even kill her. The strength of the uterine contractions could cause uterine rupture. Um, it's just a really, really, really nasty, risky abortion method. Um, but when abortion was legalized in Western countries, they're like, what do the Japanese know? And they went ahead and did it. And at least Carmen was a bit better off than a lot of women because some doctors were doing this outpatient. They would just suck out a bunch of amniotic fluid, put the saline in, send her home, say, okay, dead baby will come out in a couple of days with no medical supervision. But Carmen was in a hospital. Um, Now, she had a history of rheumatic heart disease, and the saline got into her bloodstream. So she died on July 19th, leaving behind her husband and her small children. Now, here's a really, really interesting contrast in how people responded. After Carmen's death, a militant Puerto Rican group, the Young Lords, pointed out that doctors at Lincoln Hospital knew that Carmen had heart problems and failed to take proper precautions. When this is an abortion technique that's known to potentially cause heart damage to the mother. So they were protesting. They were saying you need to exercise more care. But Merle Goldman, a spokeswoman for an abortion advocacy organization, was completely opposed to trying to take any steps to correct this. She said that she hoped Carmen's death wouldn't deter other women from undergoing abortions. And she stressed that her group was going to lobby against the proposed health department regulations to abortion practice. And this is something that we continue to see it goes on and on and on and on and on. I called it the Compton Carr effect after Janice Compton Carr in Florida. A woman will die. You'll notice that appalling things are going on. The state will want to step in and stop it. And the abortion lobby goes, no, 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 don't touch, don't touch. No touchy. And because access is more important than the actual women. Now, New York City's chief medical examiner, Milton Halpern, did not agree with this attitude. He expressed concern that ill-equipped and poorly staffed freestanding clinics were posing a danger to women. And if you can just kind of look here, I don't know which ones I missed, but here we have New York State deaths in that 2-year period, roughly 2-year period between New York legalizing abortion on demand and the Roe v. Wade decision that basically said every state could do like New York. Only Roe versus Wade's companion decision, Doe versus Bolton, Roe versus Wade allowed health of the mother abortions past viability. And then the companion decision, Doe v. Bolton, they defined health so broadly that literally, if she has a reason, it's good enough. I mean, I would feel bad about how I looked in a bathing suit, and that's a mental health thing. And I'm serious. I am not exaggerating. That is how big this loophole was. And states have been kind of closing that up, but that's a topic for later. But like in 1970, we have a woman named Pearl who had cardiac arrest during an abortion. Barbara had a sickle cell crisis triggered by abortion. Linda was sent back to Indiana. She traveled from Indiana with a hole in her uterus. Maria had a fetus shoved through her uterus into her pelvis. Kimberly had cardiac arrest. You can just see all of these things that happened to these women. And I will get, some people are immediately thinking, yeah, but it's better than when it was illegal. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Let's go to California in 1971. So now, when California legalized abortion, they didn't have the same free-for-all New York had. Until Roe v. Wade came down, they had to be performed in a hospital. So they were showing some concern for women's well-being. So Betty was 21 years old when she checked into Doctor's Hospital on July 19th, 1971. Betty was 8 weeks pregnant. Everything seemed to go well, but in recovery, she suddenly went into cardiorespiratory arrest. And the doctor thought that maybe it was a bad vial of medication, but they did a toxicology test on it and nothing was wrong with it. Apparently, what happened is that the abortion triggered sickling of her blood cells because of sickle cell disorder. And 2 other women I know of, Margaret and Barbara, also died from a similar cause. And some of the other deaths in advance of Roe versus Wade, actually, even before California loosened it, before 1970, I found 4 women who died from therapeutic abortions where they were checked into the hospital. And then we had these other women here. So now this is not all the women who died. It's just some examples. Now, the real takeaway from this is that legalization did not stop abortion deaths. It just shifted their legal status. So the legal status of the abortion changed, but the death status of the woman didn't. You know, she was just as dead. And I made this chart using statistics on how many women died from abortion every year. I started in 1960. I did this chart in 2003, so it goes up to 2003. And the purple is illegal abortion deaths, and the orange is legal abortion deaths. And you can see in the 60s just falling. And this is because of improvements in medical care. Antibiotics were getting better. I hate to admit it, but Harvey Karman inventing the Karman cannula probably helped. You were able to do a suction curettage instead of a sharp curettage. Blood transfusions were becoming more readily available. So advances in medical technology are the reason that we were seeing this. And you can look and you can see there were always a few legal abortion deaths happening. Clear back, as far as I've found, there have been some abortion deaths where the doctor was legitimately trying to save the woman's life and she died anyway. But if you look here, where California and New York started loosening up their abortion laws, now the deaths are still falling, but legal abortion deaths are gradually replacing the illegal abortion deaths. And then the downward trend kind of leveled off, actually. And it was no longer as sharp a downward trend as it had been. And that might be just because eventually you approach the asymptote. There can never be a zero because, like abortion activists are always saying, all surgery has risks. And that includes abortion. I mean, with Vanessa Preston's death in Texas, Curtis Boyd did the abortion. And from what I can tell, it was just one of those fluky things. He had emergency procedures in place. His staff responded appropriately, but she died anyway. So yeah, all surgery has risks. There's always going to be those few occasions where that happens. So abortion deaths are never, ever, ever going to be zero. As long as abortions are being done, some women are going to die. That's inevitable. Now, it may be counterintuitive. Well, why would this happen where it would level off? And a lot of that is based on the assumptions about who was performing these abortions. And Planned Parenthood had a conference on abortion in America in 1955, and 90% of abortions as of the mid 1950s were being done by doctors. And a woman named Nancy Howell Lee wrote a book called The Search for an Abortionist. And she also, interviewing women, found that about 90% of women prior to widespread legalization found a doctor to do their abortions. Either he got her in through a legal loophole, or he just, or put a little blood on your menstrual pad and we'll say you were having a miscarriage and I did a D&C. A lot of the people who weren't doctors were paramedical people like nurses and midwives, and even many lay abortionists had training from doctors, and they had doctors providing instruments, they had doctors providing medication, they had doctors providing emergency backup to come in and treat complications. And so this wasn't, this this stereotypical reaching for the rustiest coat hanger in your closet. Now, what happened with legalization, something people fail to take into account is that you are taking away the fear of prison if you screw up. And I know of 3 erstwhile legal abortionists, criminal abortionists: Mylan Vooch, Jesse Ketchum, and Benjamin Munson. And all 3 of these guys were doing illegal abortions. I looked and looked and looked and could find 0 evidence that any of them killed a patient in their illegal abortion practice. But they got sloppy beyond belief after legalization. Munson was sending women home with huge amounts of the fetus still in their bodies. Munson was actually prosecuted because he sent this woman home. As the prosecutor put it, you pull out a 3-inch leg, you know there's more still in there. And of course, abortion rights groups are rallying. Dr. Munson helps women, free Dr. Munson, and he managed to beat the rap and kill another woman. They had Mylan Vooch in D.C. A reporter actually won a prize for uncovering what a cesspool his practice was. And this guy, Jesse Ketchum in New York, was doing hysterotomy abortions in his office. And that's like a mini C-section. It's just the intention's to deliver a dead baby instead of a live one. So they started taking these absolutely staggering risks with women's lives. Because, I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, yeah, Ketchum got arrested, but, he served a short time and then he was set free. Vooch, nothing happened to him other than some lawsuits. Munson was arrested, but he beat the rap. And it just prosecuting for egregious malpractice. And again, I'm talking egregious malpractice. just kind of fell out of favor and became extremely rare. You have to be a Kermit Gosnell nowadays to get actually charged because you are showing such appalling indifference to women's lives. But one of the reasons, when I was at Life Dynamics, I listened to years and years and years of tapes of National Abortion Federation risk management seminars and annual meetings. And if I could rub a lamp and get a genie and have a wish, one of them would be that every single tape of every single National Abortion Federation event was available on YouTube. And I could just go, listen to this. This will curl your hair. There's an abortionist in Chicago, safe and legal, Steve Lichtenberg. And I forget how many dead patients there are at his clinic. I think there's 3 where he performed the abortion and 2 more where somebody else. Why don't I look it up? Why don't I look up Lichtenberg? So this was 90. What was her name? Oh, Deanna. There we go. Steve Lichtenberg, Deanna Bell. Lichtenberg. I know 16 women that died at that chain of clinics. I don't know. Lichtenberg. There he is. I don't know how many were at his clinic. It was multiple patients. The important thing here is that at this National Abortion Federation risk management seminar, Lichtenberg was talking about how he loved to do high-risk abortions in an outpatient setting, and it was kind of fun to deal with complications, and he would not call the ambulance right away because he really loved the fun and excitement of treating it there. It was like a challenge. It's like, can you defeat the monster in this video game? And the moderator, Michael Burnhill, who was medical director of Planned Parenthood at the time, ripped him a new asshole. Said, you are playing Russian roulette with patients' lives. Now, the interesting thing is that Burnhill ripped Lichtenberg a new one. He didn't get thrown out of the National Abortion Federation for doing this stuff. He was able to stay a National Abortion Federation member. And they will tell you, oh, if there's serious complications or any problems with malpractice, we wouldn't let them stay a member. That is an unmitigated crock of shit. That is an unmitigated crock of shit, and that's a cause for another video at another time. So you got Lichtenberg getting chewed out in a NAF meeting by a Planned Parenthood medical director for playing Russian roulette with women's lives. And that's why this is not closer to 0 than it really should be. So, yeah, the idea that legalization was some kind of women are safe now is not true. It's not true. The abortion lobby, these pro-choice groups, and I didn't understand it until recently. It's that intersectionalism where the group is more important than the person. And at some point they decided that here's women and access to abortion is good for women. And therefore you can't touch access to abortion. Even if what you're doing is closing down some filthy, disgusting, cockroach-infested abortion mill, it's still access. And an abortion that kills the woman evidently is better than no abortion at all.